on this. I'm Emma McKinley. Nice to see everybody. I am starting off a presentation, which is definitely a collaborative piece. So welcome to the fourth in our 7 sessions of the Ocean Literacy Dialogue series. The Ocean Literacy Dialogue series started in Lisbon at the UN Ocean Conference last summer, hosted by IOC UNESCO. Second was run in October in Santos in Brazil, hosted by Ronaldo. And we are here very warmly welcomed by our Canadian friends, the Canadian Ocean Literacy Coalition, hosted here in Vancouver for the 3rd edition, which is fantastic. And it's great to see so many of you here in the room. Today is going to be very much a working session. So we're going to talk for a little bit, but then we're going to hand over to you guys. And we definitely want this to be an interactive, co-development, collaborative session. That's the point. That's what's in the title. Next slide, please, Meg. I think I've said all those things. So what we wanted to do was, in case anybody hadn't joined our previous sessions on ocean literacy, is start off with a bit of a reminder of where we're at in terms of the ocean literacy definition and what we're really talking about and how the concept has evolved over recent years. So, some of you might have been in some of the sessions over the last couple of days, but just to make sure we're all on the same page before we start working together. Ocean literacy has been around for 20 or so years, been started by some amazing colleagues and fantastic marine educators who defined ocean literacy in its very simplest way. Ooh, that was weird. As understanding the ocean's influence on you and your influence on the ocean. Started off with 3 key components around communication, knowledge, and behavior, which are all still incredibly central to that work. And that diagram on the screen is one that you can see from a paper that was from Brennan et al. In 2019. And then more recently, we've been exploring that in a bit more detail and expanding the definition and dimensions to explore what other things might be included within the relationship between people and the ocean and what that might mean for ocean literacy. Next slide, please, Meg. Sorry, as you put your headphones in. Oh, that's quite hard to see. So we've suggested there are 10 different types of dimensions grouped together in 5 kind of main themes. So dimensions around the first 3, so knowledge, communication, and behavior, but also things like awareness, activism, I've forgotten what attitudes. Emotional connection, access and experience, proximity to the ocean, individual and collective action and behavior change, adaptive capacity, trust and transparency. So it's complicated. There are lots of different factors that we're thinking about when we're thinking about ocean literacy now. Next slide, please. This Ocean Literacy Research Cafe is really trying to build on some earlier work that we've been doing for the last couple of years to think about, okay, so how can we continue to develop the ocean literacy world through ocean literacy research? What are the research needs for ocean literacy practice, for engaging people in ocean literacy, and for really integrating it into the work we're doing around ocean conservation and feeding into ocean decision making? So what's the research side of it? So we're really focusing on that in today's session. We have co-developed with lots of wonderful people over the last couple of years a working definition, which is definitely going to keep evolving. This is a starting point and part of a conversation. But how we've defined ocean literacy research right now is an interdisciplinary cross-sector field of research, which explores the diverse dimensions, drivers, influence, and impacts of ocean literacy initiatives. So we're trying to understand what's driving the ocean literacy initiatives, how they're being received, what the indicators of success might be, how they're being integrated into policy, what else we can do, what else is needed to ensure we maximize the potential of ocean literacy throughout the ocean decade and beyond. It's a very diverse concept, and it's thinking about a range of different aspects, so social, cultural aspects, heritage components, a lot of the things that we've been hearing about through the sessions over the last couple of days. Next slide, please, Nick. So some of you might have been in our perceptions session yesterday afternoon, where we talked about some of the initiatives that we're starting to see come out of the global community. Oh, pen fell off my leg. I just want to give you a bit of a snapshot. It's okay, I don't need it. A bit of a snapshot of some of the national studies that have happened that we're drawing on through the work we're doing as an ocean literacy research community. So the first is the incredible work that's been done in Canada, led by the Canadian Ocean Literacy Coalition over 2019 to 2020 on their national study. And of course, this work has led to 9 key themes in the development of the ocean literacy strategy, which is obviously really feeding into Canadian policy, which was launched yesterday, right? I've lost track of my days. So yesterday? It was yesterday. Next slide, please, Meg. In the UK, we've been doing similar work. So we've had a national study which is now being carried out across all 4 countries of the UK. With we're waiting for the results from Northern Ireland, so we don't have the final sample size, but we've got over 12,000 respondents to that study, looking at 8 of the 10 dimensions that I mentioned of ocean literacy. And that study will keep running over the next remaining 7 years of the ocean decade to track how things are changing, to track how perceptions are changing, and to help us understand how we might be able to better engage different types of audiences in ocean work and ocean literacy initiatives across the UK. Next slide, please. And there's also been some incredible work in Brazil being led by Ronaldo, where again, we're starting to understand perceptions of different communities towards the ocean, the types of behaviors people are willing to engage with, the awareness of how the ocean is impacting people's lives, really giving us insight into the different levels of ocean literacy on various national scales. Oh, voice went. Next slide, please. I'm going to hand over to Diz now. Thanks.
Perfect. Hello, everyone. Thanks so much, Emma. So building off the context setting in terms of ocean literacy and how that's changing and evolving over time, and where are we at as a community and some of the work being done at the start of the ocean decade, in terms of the research community, we were very siloed, fragmented. There wasn't anything that was bringing us together in some kind of coordinated way. And so when they had the call for the first laboratory, not sure why. And Ari, if there's anything I can do to stop that, go for it. When they made the call out for the first laboratory, which, as many of you know, there was one laboratory dedicated for each of the outcomes of the decade. And yet they started with outcome number 7 for the first laboratory, which is an inspiring, engaging ocean, which is very much, of the 7 outcomes, the one that was least science-based and more around what the ocean literacy community would identify with. And so that's when the research community really started to reach out to it together and said, let's co-develop a research program for the decade. And so we came together, next slide, please, Meg, put in a proposal to lead a session at the laboratory. And it was very much a bottom-up kind of crowdsourced opportunity where we led a workshop, not knowing kind of who would show up, but over 87 kind of self-identified ocean literacy researchers from, I want to say 63 countries. It was a very good range, came together for a workshop where we talked about who's doing what. Where is it being done? What's being done? What's a kind of a stock take of the current research out there. Next slide, please. That then led to us as what we refer to as the OLRC community, the Ocean Literacy Research Community. Okay, no worries, we're jumping around. We used that opportunity to create a story map of everything we heard during that workshop. That story map has grown to now 137 researchers who've joined the community, each adding the work that they're doing. And so the story map really starting to take shape in terms from a demographics, from a research kind of priority gaps area. And we've continued to work together over the past 18 months. So we've had 3 different workshops. We've had surveys in between that continue to build that kind of inventory and understanding of where we're at. Next slide, please. And what that's led to, which is feeding directly into this ocean literacy dialogues here, is as a community, we've identified 4 main priority areas for research throughout the decade. That's not to say these will be the only 4, but it's where we've started to self-organize and focus the work right now. And so each of these areas that you can see that have been identified, those have directly informed the sessions that we're hosting here throughout this OL Dialogue series. Next slide, please. And for those, we've got, you're coming into it tonight. Right after this, I just wanted to draw attention. You saw on the previous slide, like justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. That was important across all the priority areas. But we have a dedicated session specifically to that topic happening right after this session here. So if that's an area of interest, Anasha DeVos and a great team of people are joining us for that discussion. So I'm going to pass it there. Actually, that's right. before I pass it over. See, this is why we work together as a team. So you've heard a bit about the context of, what ocean literacy is, a little bit about this evolving community around what ocean literacy research is and what we're starting to self-identify as the priority areas to build the program throughout the decade. Before we pass on to the framing of this session and the conversation to be had, is just any questions at a high level, just around ocean literacy or background or thoughts so far. All right. Yeah, right. Or not. Okay, over to Ronaldo.
Hey, thank you. Hello, everybody. From this story that starts kind of 20 years ago on ocean literacy and this recent movement of research, we are today in the IMPAC5. Let's look at it from the other side. We are hosting this session in the biggest event in the world to think about ocean conservation and marine protected areas. And what we want to look now is how those two agendas are connected. How can we work together? Sometimes that is so clear, sometimes might not be. I'll give you one example from what I think that would be a goal from today. Do you have anyone from the UK in the room? How did you call this? A mobile phone. Do you have anyone from the US? How do you call that? A cell phone. We have two communities using different words for the same thing. When we take attention to the keynote speakers and every single other presentation during the IMPAC5 until now, we can hear about the need of community engagement, engaging stakeholders, working together, building things together. If you look about, then we can go, the IMPAC5, as this presents, there are 5 priorities for the ocean literacy research agenda defined together. The IMPAC5 has 5 thematics that were defined as important here. And when you look, for example, for the first one, building a global marine protected area network, the description of this just starting working with the global marine community to working with someone, understanding their relationship with the marine protected areas. You can go further in the second one about managing, let's say, advancing successful approaches to ensure marine protected areas are sustainable and resilient through community engagement and advocacy. And that community engagement and advocacy is related to our relationship with the ocean. That is the ocean literacy definition. So what we want to do today is looking at the 5 IMPAC5 marine conservation themes and linking it with the ocean literacy research priorities. And hear from you, that's why this is a dynamic session. We want to understand, whatever you come from more, you feel yourself more from an ocean literacy background or for a conservation background, how can we discuss the same thing with our words? What are we not seeing in the ocean literacy discussions that you guys from the conservation perspective can add in our agenda, and how can we change some knowledge? I think that is the main goal of our session, and I will pass to Jen.
Thank you, Ronaldo. You said it so well, I have nothing to add. That's what we're here to do, folks. We are really here to do just what Ronaldo said. We're looking at what opportunities exist in the alignment of these agendas, and we're here to do that together. So this is the part of the workshop where we are inviting all of you to share your voices, your thoughts, your experiences, your stories, as we take a look at these 2 agendas, the themes from IMPAC5 and marine conservation, as well as the priority areas and dimensions of ocean literacy. And we have those posted around the room, which we're going to get to in the second part of this participatory session. So part 1, what we're inviting you to do now is we're going to spend 15 minutes or so together as a group, as a collective. And we're going to discuss one of these themes that you identify in just a moment is most important to start with. And then the second part of the session will be milling about and breaking up into groups
of your choice to address the other themes as they are on the wall, and adding your voices about the questions that you have, the concerns that you have, where you see areas of synergy in your work, in your life, where you don't, and what opportunities you see for the alignment of these agendas toward a common goal, which is marine conservation success. So to begin, in looking at, maybe we can flip back, Meg, if you don't mind, to, or is it forward? I think to, yeah. So these are the questions that we will be asking. So where do we see alignment between ocean literacy research and marine protected area agendas? What reservations you may have? What is needed to best promote and facilitate active collaboration? How can alignment better or best support more voices? Inclusivity. How important is it that we find synergies to work together? So those are just a suggestion of the questions that we can ask. They don't all have to be asked. They don't all have to be addressed. You take the lead on this part of the workshop. So to begin, the themes that Ronaldo was mentioning, and I think we do have to go back for this one, Meg, please, to the chart, if you don't mind. There we go. So of these themes, I'm going to ask for a show of hands of which one you feel is most important to start with. Where do you feel that you most align? What resonates most with you in your work, in your lives? So looking at number one, building a global MPA network, and the OLR priority, building public awareness and or support for knowledge, awareness, communication. A show of hands that is most important. Raise them high. Thank you. And so for the second one, managing marine protected area and human activity, and how are we looking at behavior change from the OLR perspective and behavior change? How important is that to you folks to discuss? Excellent. Number three, conserving biodiversity and addressing climate change. And how does the public understand, experience, and feel about climate change? Raise of hands for how important that one is. I feel a heavy majority coming here. Okay. And then number four, advancing conservation in the blue economy. And how does a sustainable blue economy impact and inspire the public? Show of hands. Oh, okay. I've got a good showing there. And finally, number five, connecting ocean culture, human well-being, and awareness, human health connections, and justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. Whoa, representative. Wow. That is definitely where we will start. And that is being led by Diz.
Fantastic. So yeah, just to reiterate what Jen said, we want the first 15 minutes, since you chose that this was this is the biggest one or to begin, then we're going to use these. We're not linearly going through these questions. Those are just provocations. They're prompts there. But what we'd love is under that theme of ocean culture and relationship and keeping the Jedi kind of lens in mind, let's just open this up for 15 minutes around any of these questions in thinking about the two agendas, the marine conservation, the ocean literacy agenda. What's striking you? What thoughts? What are you thinking about? Are they well aligned? Are there gaps to close? Are there opportunities to work together? So let's just open it up and see you based on what you've heard so far. What is the initial kind of thoughts in the room? Sure. Yeah. We're also noting we have virtual friends joining us. And while we are going to have this conversation in the room, Aneri behind us here is working with the virtual group on a Miro board with the same exercise. So when we kind of share back a bit, so will the virtual team. So let's open it up. Any thoughts? Great. There is a mic. Perfect. Is there two going? Here it is. Beautiful.
Hello, I'm Randa. I like to tell people rhymes with panda. Makes it easy. So I had a conversation with a young person this afternoon who said they had a bit of a challenge with the term ocean literacy. So it's stuck in my head, so I have to get it out, otherwise I won't be able to think about anything else for the whole session. And so what's the problem with ocean literacy? And it's the connotation of literate versus illiterate. And so when it comes to cultures, we need to recognize that some cultures are ocean literate and that we're learning together and we're developing or improving our literacy. And I think even if you stuck your toe in the ocean, you have ocean literacy. You've had a human embodied experience of it, and that counts. So that's what I have to say for now.
I absolutely love that that's the first comment made. And I think even those who squarely kind of identify being within the ocean literacy community absolutely struggle with the term. And I mean, I can speak from my experience here in Canada. When we started that national study in 2019 and 2020, I mean, ocean literacy is one of the most problematic terms for it's a deficit model. It implies that there's a group of people who know more and they need to pass that down to others who don't. And so right out of the gates, it's a problematic term. However, you know, we created space here in Canada, like, let's not get stuck on the term because it is well used in academic or government or policies. It's embedded within the UN decade framework. So the term itself isn't going to go away, but how we create space for the conversation and where we want to get to together is what matters, you know, not the term. So ocean connections, ocean relationship, ocean culture, identity. And that's, you know, what we kind of approach the conversation in Canada. We also acknowledge by our Indigenous friends and colleagues that, which is so true, is that in many ways, ocean literacy is a modern term for non-Indigenous people to catch up to what Indigenous people have always known. And here in Canada, that's absolutely the way we approach it. So it's not to say that Indigenous colleagues aren't leaning into the conversation. They very much are too, and we are listening and working closely together. It's just that they would never use that term, but we know where the connection points are. And so together we're exploring that. So I just think it's great that you brought that up. So what other questions just around, like, can I actually just curious, like who in the room is from the MPA conservation world? Not the ocean literacy world at all. Great. All right, too. Are you, Gary, and what's your name? Jenny, are you comfortable? Like, can we ask you two just to, like, when you see us trying to put these two agendas side by side, what's your immediate kind of thought? Like, can they be aligned? Do they align?
I guess I don't know exactly. I am not familiar with it. Oh, thanks. I'm not familiar. I'm not with the ocean literacy world, and actually, I met somebody who works on it a couple of days ago, and so we were talking about it. But I work. Yeah. Nice job. And so I was kind of interested, but I had similar thoughts. What the earlier speaker or comment was Panda. Yeah. Thanks. And that I wasn't it because it was just saying there is some dimension of it being a deficit model. And so I'm here because I'm interested in thinking about it and what kinds of questions that you guys are asking. And I'm starting a new project on people's like connection to and relationship with the ocean. So it's basically similar ideas, just with a different, not with this like term associated with it. So I was sort of curious to think that under the umbrella of the term, how are you guys thinking about it?
That's great. And thanks for that comment. And the three references that Emma made to the project in Canada and the UK and Brazil, if you were to look at, and we're happy to share, like all those questions that went out around public ocean perception research, nowhere do you see the term ocean literacy. So it's all about what you're, asking about those, what is your ocean connection? What's your relationship? What are those experiences in your life where you start to foster that sense of connection, or where your awareness or understanding has been deepened? What are the kind of experiences that are doing, what's fostering agency? What's, what are current behavioral intentions, and what are the things that have led to behavior change? So those are the things that we're looking at. We just, instead of throwing out the term that we know is problematic, we've kind of self-organized under that because it exists, but we don't get hung up on the term. So I think in many ways, this is a great example of the iPhone example. You're calling it one thing, we're calling it another, but we're actually out to answer the same kind of questions. So thanks for sharing that. And Gary, we're going to put you on the spot.
And I'll admit I'm new to the whole ocean literacy world myself, even though I work within that. But from what I understand and what I'm hearing, I think I agree with the first two speakers. And I love that analogy of if you put your toe in the ocean, you have ocean literacy. And to me, it's a matter of everyone has different types of knowledge when it comes to the ocean. And, you know, you might consider some people in a sort of a source situation where they're brimming with information, and others that are more sort of sinks and ready to receive information. And I guess what I'm looking for is how do you make things flow from sources into sinks effectively?
Great. Thanks so much, Gary. And now we put those two on the hot seat. Any other comments? And Neri, this includes if you've got some comments coming in from the chat. Okay, we'll take one from the floor and then we'll move to you. Great.
Hi, I'm Amanda. I'm from Canada, just outside of Toronto. For me, as a non-linear, like creative thinker, I'm so happy to know that this term does exist. I found my way back to the ocean through scuba diving. I started out in political science years and years and years ago, but just felt like there wasn't necessarily room or where I wanted to show up in whatever conversation there were to be had on these important issues. And through diving and free diving and really experiencing and exploring that human ocean connection for myself and partnering that with my entrepreneurial mind, that has led me to my new startup, which is teaching people that our everyday actions are connected to the ocean, starting with your beauty and personal care routines. So being able to use something that everybody is aware of, that there needs to be better solutions designed so that we are not having as much of an impact or a negative impact. But there's also so much to do with the emotional benefits and that connection that comes through. And that's certainly where I have found my place. So it's so exciting to know that there is a term that separates, because I'm a marketer, not really a scientist. And I did my dive master training and I worked on a conservation project in Indonesia this past summer, where I came into it and I was among scientists day in and day out and not really knowing if I was going to be of any value to the project. But knowing that absolutely there is so much room for this media and marketing communications and from that sort of a lens. So it's very exciting to feel that it's defined or we're working towards doing that. So I'm really just happy to be part of the conversation.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And it's a great example because one question we often get to, like, who is in this ocean literacy community or who identifies as being a part of it? And like in the early days when the first term emerged and it emerged in the United States, it really had a specific agenda. And we've got one of the early, masters in the room here, Diana, waving at the back, but it was in fact the ocean science community in the States reaching out to the national marine educators with a specific task, which was to get more ocean science into the national science curriculum in the US. So it was very specific. But what Emma tried to share too, and did over the last 25 years, it has gone so much more beyond ocean science knowledge. So that's where we have a bit of a branding issue, I would say. Like I still think a lot of people are stuck on that understanding of ocean literacy. And if people continue to get stuck there, then it is problematic, right? Because then it really is that literacy, that deficit model that one community is trying to get everyone else to understand. But what we're hearing, and Amanda's story is fantastic, is it's where the educators, marine social scientists, storytellers, artists, like it's the emotional people, it's the connections right to the ocean, the relationship, and every keynote has mentioned building that groundswell of support, making those emotional connections. We don't act on what we know, we act on what we feel. And it's all of us up to that. So I think that's the umbrella, I think, that the ocean literacy tries to catch. I'm going to pass it over to Aneri here.
Thanks to everyone who's joined us online. There's been a few comments that have come in to contribute to this conversation. I'll just read it out loud for the sake of the room, and you can read it on the screen. So Katrina says, even my experience being from a small island, we are so disconnected from the ocean. I love the term because it shows something is missing. And Daniela, we have noticed that in most of coastal communities, people does not know how to swim, even fishermen. And this physical disconnection with the ocean is reflected also in their behavior, misunderstanding the good and services of the ocean. And it sounds like Danielle is doing some amazing work. We work with 10,000 kids, 63% of them didn't know how to swim, and 37% approximately were sons of fishermen. And Daniela is a diver buddy. You got a diver buddy. And echoing what Diz just said, Katrina's comments, bringing together the creative and the technical is the most important thing for sure. Thanks, folks. Please, if you have more comments or contributions, keep them coming.
Thanks so much, Aneri, for monitoring that. And thanks everyone, those comments and insights shared, really helpful to this conversation. You want? Yeah.
Can you go back to the questions slide, please? Sorry, because I think that this first discussion was so nice and you get some answers already. Because look at what, no, the other one, the next, no, one, yeah, that one, thank you. For example, do we have any alignment between ocean literacy research and MPA agendas? It seems that yes, because we are looking for connection, we work for connections of people. So we can find these alignments. What reservations may we have that maybe both communities should not stick in a term? If ocean literacy does not work in a particular place or area, okay, we can just say connection. And also the ocean literacy groups need to recognize that in documents and things. And maybe that is an advance. And for the ocean literacy term discussion, let me say one thing that's also important, that the goal here for the IMPAC5 in this term is a global network community. And when you think in a global network community of MEPAs, we are including different countries, languages, and cultures. And this discussion has gone for when we translated this for other languages. I'm Brazilian. In Portuguese is exactly what Panda said. The literacy translated to the Portuguese would not be accepted at all. In Portugal, it is okay. In Brazil, it is not, because that would exclude a lot of people that do not even have a formal education. So how can I say about the ocean? So it was translated as culture in English. Then they say cultura oceânica, because it's how you relate to the ocean. And that was acceptable. So my example of that is that maybe for the marine protected areas, for more these areas, maybe don't need to use the term ocean literacy, but we can use connection or relation, and then you'll be fine. But we agree are talking the same thing.
It's fine. All right. Thank you, everyone. That was a good start. And now we know where we're headed in terms of our next 15 minutes of our workshop together. And in this next 15 minutes, we would like to ask you to stand up, stretch your legs, move around the room, where you will see 5 different mural boards, easel boards posted, and there will be markers and sticky notes. And one of us will be there to facilitate the same conversation around the next 4 themes that haven't yet been discussed. So we will take that time. Please go to whichever one you feel resonates with you most. If there's too many people there to start, continue on to another one and just move on. If you feel comfortable staying.
Hi, folks. Can you hear us now? Hi. I'll see you later. Okay, perfect. Yay. Hi, Anne. So what we're gonna do now, I need to make sure I can hear you. Welcome everybody. I'm gonna grab my headphones because I can't hear you. So or share. Actually, I'm gonna put this in gallery view so we are. Oh, can you stop sharing that? Here, I think I can do that from here. Perfect. Hi, everyone. I am going to figure out a way that I can hear you in a second. But if you want, feel free to turn your cameras on at this point, just so we can take a minute to see each other before we go into our next group. And I'm gonna grab my headphones. I'll be right back. Okay, if anyone wants to be my tester and unmute themselves, say hi. I want to make sure I can hear you for this process.
Hello. Hi.
Okay, keep saying hi.
Hello.
Hey, there we go. Now I got you in my ear. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for your contributions to the chat. My name is Aneri, not Diz as it suggests at the bottom. Yeah, if you want to keep your camera up, that's totally up to you, your choice. Thanks for coming and contributing to the chat. What we're going to be doing this afternoon, or 2 a.m. or whatever time it is, wherever you are, we're also going to be going through the same questions and themes, but instead of the chart paper like the people in the room here, we're going to be using a Miro board. That was the link that I dropped into the chat earlier. Did everyone, were you able to open that board? I can drop the link in there again.
Yeah, please do, because I joined a few minutes late, so I didn't see it.
Sure thing. Here you go. Try that.
Yeah.
Can people open the Miro board? No, okay. That's okay. So Meg, people aren't able to access the Miro board, so I'll just share screen on my end, and then I'll type in verbally, or people are typing in their answers into there. Thanks for your patience, y'all. The hybrid world is a new world. Okay. Oh, you don't even see the link. Oh, you know what? Try this. I think I know what's happening. Okay, try that. Yeah. Success. Let me see. Anyone? They can see it. Okay, I'll just share screen and type it in here. All right, so I'm going to share my screen now. Can you start yours, Meg? Okay, now can everyone see this board in front of us? Okay, awesome. Sorry about the link. I think we had some issues there. So what we'll have to do, we're going to go through question by question. So starting with question 1, where do we see alignment between the OL research, ocean literacy research, and MPA agendas? And we'll start, you know, it doesn't have to be linear depending on what your interests are. Just open to but if you have any ideas, comments, feel free to unmute yourself and pass them on. So where do we see alignment between OL research and MPA agendas in any of these 5 points?
Harry here in Australia. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I guess my comment is I pick up on something Craig Strang said at the session yesterday, that we need to embrace all past efforts. Certainly from my perspective, there's 20 years of great collaboration amongst marine educators around the globe in any of these areas. So there's already a global network. And yet certainly it seems to me that it's been neglected that this global network already exists and has been doing great work up until now. For example, in the Pacific, ocean literacy has been promoted throughout the Pacific by a group called International Pacific Marine Educators Network. And yet we don't seem to be engaged at all in any of these supposed dialogues. So I guess my comment is, please take note of existing networks and work that's been done over a long period of time.
Absolutely. Thank you, Harry, for that. I'm just going to write here. You can hear? Oh, great. Okay, perfect. Thank you, Harry. Meg Callan will be taking over the typing. That's a really good point, and makes sense for the knowledge too, intergenerational knowledge that exists in those networks. And honestly, I feel like that that applies across all of these themes, whether it's building the global MPA network, managing human activity, because all of this does happen at a local level.
Thanks. I would agree with that, particularly in the one to the far right, connecting ocean culture and human well-being. One of the things, particularly through our Pacific Island networks, that we've built into ocean literacy is, and it's great to hear people like Diz talk about this in Canada as well, recognition of the links between traditional knowledge, and I know people have trouble with the definition of ocean literacy, but the links between traditional knowledge and ocean literacy, and that's something that has been worked on for a long time now across the Pacific.
Great. And I love Ronaldo's example of, you know, even from different areas of the world, we call a cell phone something different. So a concept that's existed since time immemorial for many indigenous cultures might be something we're calling ocean literacy now. Is there anyone joining virtually from the MPA side of things that has some perspective on how ocean literacy ties into MPA networks or planning. Oh, Daniela, go ahead, please.
Hi, I'm so sorry. I was trying to do the mirror thing online, but I don't know how to write. But I was thinking, because I used to work in the government for the Ministry of Environment for a long time, and we were doing like very technical work, doing these baselines for MPAs and everything. And one of the things that I realized after that, because maybe when you're inside this governmental institution doing this technical work, maybe you can miss the inclusion of the real inclusion of communities. So what I think is that we do, and we here in Ecuador, I'm from Ecuador, and here in Ecuador, they are going, the government is starting to doing so, because a lot of suggestions, because you now, or you have a lot of MPAs, but the people who's living there, they don't recognize themselves, what they're doing there, why their activities are so important, why this connection with the ocean is important. So the benefits, and if you're not taking care of this, how this is not, is the opposite of the benefit for them. So there's a lot of alignment between ocean literacy and ocean literacy research and MPA's agenda. So inside that, every MPA has their action plans, and inside of them there are educational, environmental programs planned. But the thing is that they have not been enough, or like, I'm thinking too fast in Spanish right now. I'm sorry.
No,
but the thing is, these plans are lack of these ocean literacy concepts and other stuff that maybe communities inside living in these MPAs can be more related to. So I wanted to say that. And that affects also the second column, which says managing MPA and human activity. And also that infers in the conserving biodiversity and addressing climate change, and and so on. So maybe a suggestion would be like, the governmental institutions and their technical people can be more related to these ocean principles and ocean literacy.
Right, it's all levels. It's not just necessarily people on the ground.
I can listen.
Oh,
thank you.
Can you hear me? You can hear now? Okay, great.
Yes, now I can hear you.
Thanks, Daniela. And I think there's somebody else who had their hand up. Just go ahead and unmute yourself. Oh, Jacqueline?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Great. I'm just reflecting, I think, a bit broadly. I come from a country, Kenya, that has several MPAs. But I think, okay, people visit these MPAs, but they do engage with the ocean if we consider touching the ocean and swimming in it. But then often there's no one to explain the meaning of ocean creatures, the definitions of the space and what it really means. So they encounter something, I think often is superficial. They go away having encountered the ocean, but not understanding what the ocean means to us. So what I'm alluding to is that you can have the structures, but not necessarily have invested enough in drawing understanding of what all that means and why it's important to protect these spaces. Yeah, I think that's been my experience.
Yeah, so that makes sense. If there isn't there's the one step, then what's the next step? Where's the next place for people to land to engage further? And thank you for your thoughts, Megan. It looks like there are a few of you who've been able to access the board. Is this true? Is there somebody that's in there? It was just Joanna. Oh, you can view it. Okay. And Meg, there was also Will Lyons in the chat put a comment in as well. Absolutely, advancing conservation, ocean literacy is a win-win for conservation goals and for the blue economy, marine resources that translate to monetary value. The local community sees the value, and those programs can be implemented across various sociopolitical and geographical dimensions. Thank you, Will. Absolutely. And we'll include that comment in the board as well. Was there anyone else who had their hand up? And we can move on to another section of the board. So Meg, we're going to move on to another section of the board. I think we've already sort of covered this topic already in our conversation. How important is it that we find synergies to work together, and why? And if people maybe have examples they'd like to share in that, also feel free to share those. I think we'll move on to the next question. The fact that you're all here, I'm gonna guess means you think we should be working together. But
Megan, can I go? Can I go back to the question 2? It's Harry from Australia again. The fact that you're all there in the room and you're doing such a great job of involving us scattered around the planet. My sort of really strong opinion about this is that even though it's difficult to do, I think face-to-face meetings at events such as the one you're at now are really the clue to finding synergies. Technology does work a bit, but in my view, ocean literacy grew and spread around the world, mainly through face-to-face meetings at things like the National Marine Education NMEA conferences in the USA, when people came from around the world and were exposed to it in that sort of face-to-face environment. So I just really want to emphasise the importance of people gathering and sharing in that real non-virtual environment.
absolutely, and I'm happy that we can include you all. And technology does, influence accessibility in some cases, but absolutely some of those in-person conversations that happen often outside of the meeting rooms can be just as influential as what happens in the meeting rooms, and those connections to each other. Absolutely, Harry. Let's move on. I'm keeping an eye on the clock here to the next question, question 3. What reservations may we have? This is a very broad question, but this could be about any of the topics at the top of the screen here. When it comes to ocean literacy, building a global MPA network, managing MPA and human activity, conserving biodiversity and addressing climate change, advancing conservation of the blue economy, and connecting ocean culture and human well-being. So it can be within any of those categories. Oh, I see there are some folks in the chat. Oh yeah, agreeing. Thank you. So Man, you mentioned synergies are critical. Ultimately, the goal is common and shared, but we have different entry points. The common point is people and better suited people to achieve human needs and conservation goals. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And Jacqueline, you're great with Henry. And then Anne Stewart, MPAs with supportive human communities outside government enforcement are more likely to succeed. And do you feel like you want to elaborate on why that might be? I'm putting you on the spot, I realize. So yeah, no, okay, great. 1 second, folks. Meg, you're able to see the chat and add. That was awesome. Will collaborative engagement allows the scientific community to extend the olive branch to the general public? Yes, it's a democratic process. Yep, awesome. Thanks, folks. Some really great points being brought up in the chat. Zooming so we can see this a bit more. So let's come back to question 3. There's already been a few in there, but what reservations may we have when it comes to, I'll make sure you can see these categories. I know I have one. I think particularly with advancing conservation in the blue economy, sometimes the concern with that is that we want to ensure that people are prioritized over profit. Oh, thank you. We've got another one here in the chat. Yeah, Sarah. Some of the challenges, so different countries, areas have different socio-political challenges. So we need to take those into consideration. Absolutely, the local context. Daniela, that's a great example of a case study where local communities help with mangrove conservation. Wow, and it's a 14-year project. That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. Lots of great thoughts coming in through the chat. Let's move on to question 4. How can alignment better or best support more voices?
I'm just gonna unmute. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Great. So one thing that I found interesting that's been brought up across some of these other sections is that there are countries working towards ocean literacy in their own way and providing their own surveys, as you saw in the introductory presentations. But there have been people saying, well, why don't we just have one global ocean literacy strategy that moves us all forward together? So just throwing that out there as something to think about. Obviously, that becomes very difficult, and there's a reason why we're doing these in our own country, but trying to come together to find that alignment.
Although I don't want to do this, we're going to give the 1-minute wrap up to
That went quick. Let's see if for question 5, what is needed to best promote and facilitate active collaboration? And again, feel free to enter thoughts into the chat function if that's easier.
somebody has to report out. No, no. What? These are what I don't think about what.
Oh, Carlos sent it back there. Thanks, Carlos. Oh, this is about some reservations, right? So, Meg, this is in the reservation section regarding establishing MPAs without feasible plans to manage them, right? The follow-up. Yeah. And Judy, thanks for your comment. People who understand the value of alignment and who want to collaborate, right? So finding those networks, finding those people. And Daniela, right? So we need more, the will of different sectors to collaborate. Absolutely. Great points. Right, and I interdisciplinary approach allows that absolutely breaking down silos. To form respect, communication, collaboration, open to different perspectives, reciprocity, and hard work. Thank you, Anne. Yeah. I think the thoughts that are all here is probably pointing in that direction. Need to, Sarah mentions, need to involve the community voices that live in MPA somehow and that are directly affected. Absolutely. If you're on the ground or on the water. Judy makes a great point. In countries with weak or no management capacity, enhancing community capacity, enhancing community capacity is often able to make their MPs to work. Yeah, that like local engagement. Jacqueline, willingness to share knowledge and techniques is needed to support collaboration. Yeah. And I guess that comes back to Harry's first point about willingness to share knowledge and techniques intergenerationally in the established networks, and then as you folks are saying, across these different silos as well. Wonderful point. Before we no, we had a fake 1 minute warning. Now we have a real 1 minute warning.
We've got a session coming in about 20 minutes, so we could take our seats in the next 1 minute so we can have a share.
Thank you all so much for your insights. We appreciate it, and that we could engage with you online. Wish you could be here in person, and for those who are in the middle of the night, an extra special thank you. Before we go back, if you wouldn't mind just dropping in the chat, maybe like where you're joining from, so that we can really feel connected to you, the ocean literacy of the world. Oh, some more wonderful points. Ideas of best and better. Kind of elitist. Right. Who knows best but the people who are on the ground. Diana, as a person working in a new position, rolled out the film industry, as a sustainability advisor for the adults who need a re-education on climate change, ocean literacy, carbon footprint. Right, many people are completely unaware of art science and make people search for the trusted places to get info. Okay, thank you. Thanks so much, everyone. We're going to reconnect your sound to the room so you'll be able to hear the conversations. But thank you so much. If there's something that you wanted to say that you did get a chance, just get in touch with us with the contact information from the COLC event registration page or the website, and we definitely want to continue gathering your feedback. Thanks, Dan. I'll see you.
What you wanted, right? I just have one too. I always need to know what the other one was. You know, on that beautiful blue.
or includes.
So this timekeeping, this is excellent. Jen.
Would you like to come on up and volunteer to say ours? Huh? No, I didn't have a volunteer in my group. Oh. Is it the speaker? Okay. So we covered a lot of ground. No, okay. A lot of ground in our session on climate change and looking at conserving biodiversity. And we saw a lot of synergies between the two agendas, really. And a lot of synergies in terms of where there's some gaps related to how we're looking at the ocean, how we're looking at land and the divisiveness between the two. How there's a division between the ocean, the marine ocean and inland waters, and how to connect people who are not on the coast, quote unquote. And we also looked at the synergies between sort of the focus on adaptive capacity and resilience in both the MPA agenda, the marine conservation agenda, and ocean literacy research. But also the need to translate that language to local levels. That adaptive capacity, for example, might not be translated in either agenda very well for everyday people. And interestingly, we did have Jennifer in our group. So we had the MPA representative, which was really the contrast and really, really interesting to see and converse about the two agendas. And one thing that is striking for all of us, or was striking for all of us, was the lack of sort of that there's a data gap. So the public perceptions is lacking in some of the agendas for conservation managers that might be more focused on data and needing the numbers to be able to make decisions or to factor it in. So without public perceptions that's translated into numbers, then the data is just lost. If it's not included, am I getting this right, Jennifer? For the most part, kind of. Talk to Jennifer to learn more, but but there are, we need resources to track the relationships to be able to be inclusive and to include different perspectives and cultures into MPA agendas. And I think that's where OLR can fill the gap. She's coming at me.
I thought you were finishing. Thank you very much. I think there's also something interesting to think about how we can challenge our current decision-making systems to move away from just the numbers. We're doing a lot of thinking about that in the UK and thinking about how we integrate diverse values and diverse types of evidence. We don't have answers yet. Give us a bit of time. So my group was talking about managing MPAs and behavior change. And one of the things we talked a lot about was trying to understand what motivates actions, whether it's penalties, whether it's incentives, and whether that, like, what matters. Like, is it worth understanding that for some people it might be they don't want to be penalized, they don't want to get a penalty, and is that okay? Like, can we look at how to engage people in different ways, and maybe we need to approach things from a range of different perspectives to get the behavior we want. And we also talked about where's my sheet, loads of other things. I know we talked about relationships as well and success stories. Hey, I still reckon my time was less. Anyway, so thank you so much for all of those fantastic points. We have so much to think about and to digest over the next couple of days. And we would really love you to stay involved with our ocean literacy research community and to keep involved with us. Was there a comment from the online? Was there one? Oh yeah, the online group. Was there a comment from you guys? There were many. Okay, Aneri. Oh, yeah.
One thing that came up on the online group was recognizing the intergenerational networks and community that already exists and tapping into that to share knowledge over time and space.
Awesome. Thanks for Neri.
Thank you. Oh, can we go back? So as I was saying, we would love for you to stay involved and stay talking to us. We definitely want this to continue being something we co-create, we co-develop, and that we keep coming back to the community to continue working on. As Diz said, these priorities are not something we expect to stay static. They will continue to change, and they're just a snapshot of the conversations we've had over the past year and a half, and they will continue developing. So if there are new ideas, new things that you think we should know about, please reach out to us. Please let us know. We'll really happily feed those into the work. Please visit the Ocean Literacy Research Community website and sign up. There are lots of ways that you can stay involved. There's the Marine Social Science Network. We have working groups for each of these research priorities. If there are things you'd like to get involved in and talk more about, let us know, get in touch, and we'll connect you with the people leading those groups. Jen is one of them. I am one of them. Ronaldo is one of them. Diz is one of them. So we can get you in touch with those groups. And of course, we have our remaining ocean literacy dialogue sessions, one happening in about 17 minutes and 2 tomorrow on blue economy and policy. So thank you. We'll really hope that we can continue to engage with you on those sessions. Next slide, please, Meg. Oh, wow. Oh, I've said those things already. Next slide, please, Meg. That's it. Thank you very much. Oh, yeah.
Just for anyone who was asking questions around that terminology, and if there's something you'd love to learn more, there was 2 things. When we finished our national study, we actually put together a special issue here in Canada. So it's a Canadian context only, but if it's of interest, one of the key articles in this special issue is on coming to terms with the term ocean literacy. And it was so all the diverse perspectives from Francophone to Inuit to coastal First Nations, like what is the tension with this term? So you're welcome to have a copy. I have a few here, but there's a whole bunch down at the Canadian Ocean Literacy Coalition booth downstairs. Please take one. And then on the same note, in the opening ceremonies, Canada's Governor General, Mary Simon, I had the distinct pleasure before she became Governor General 2 years ago to co-author an article with her, along with Pauline Waterfall, which is a Heiltsuk elder here in the Heiltsuk Nation of Bella Bella. And the 3 of us, together with Wendy Watson-Wright, who was a real champion of ocean literacy early days here in Canada and at the IOC UNESCO, the 4 of us, well, actually those 3 elders and me as like just the young pup kind of stitching it all together, no longer a young pup, but we wrote this article, and it's all about that. So Pauline talks about kind of dismissing the term ocean literacy, but what does it mean from Heiltsuk? And then Mary leans right in, with the Inuit culture perspective. So this too, help yourself, more copies downstairs. Thanks so much.